I still remember the night I lay tangled in Chris's arms, my skin burning from his touch, my mind screaming at me that I had just crossed a line I could never return from. The thrill was undeniable. His kisses were fire, his hands electric, and in those stolen moments, I felt alive in a way I had not felt in years. Yet, as the passion subsided, reality crept in. Michael, my husband, was at home, believing I was safe in bed dreaming beside him. In that very instant, I knew I loved them both, but in very different ways. Before I go deeper into this story, I want to pause and say a heartfelt thank you to every single one of you watching. To all my subscribers, your support means the world to me. To all new and returning viewers who are yet to subscribe, I cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button because it is the fuel and energy that keeps this channel alive. Please, as you listen, do not hold back, share your thoughts in the comments below. I truly want to hear how this story makes you feel. Now, let me introduce myself. I am an American woman in my early 30s, raised in the suburbs, the kind of girl people believed had it all together. I married Michael when I was 24. He was stable, responsible, and safe. He was the man every mother dreams her daughter will marry. We had a house with a white fence, 2 cars, and a routine that made sense. But somewhere along the way, the fire faded. Michael was still the man who tucked me in at night, but he was no longer the man who set my heart racing. Then came Chris. Chris was everything Michael was not. Adventurous, bold, unpredictable. I met him at the gym, of all places. He had a way of looking at me that made me feel like the only woman in the world. It started innocently, just friendly chats after workouts. But soon, those chats turned into coffee dates, and coffee dates became dinners where I laughed louder than I had in years. With Chris, I rediscovered the woman I had lost, the one who craved adventure, danger, and passion. The first time I kissed him, I told myself it would never happen again. I went home that night, crawled into bed beside Michael, and cried quietly into my pillow. But the next time I saw Chris, my body betrayed me. The pull was too strong. The second kiss led to more, and before long, I was living 2 lives, Michael's devoted wife by day, and Chris's forbidden lover by night. I told myself lies to keep going. I convinced myself that I was still faithful to Michael in my heart because I loved him. I convinced myself that what I shared with Chris was not wrong because it was different. But deep down, I knew I was destroying everything. One evening, while Michael sat at the dining table going over bills, I found myself watching him in silence. He looked tired, his brow furrowed, his hands steady as he worked through our responsibilities. That was the man who carried our world on his shoulders. I loved him for his steadiness, for the life he gave me. And yet, in my phone was a text from Chris waiting for me, "I miss you." Tonight? The guilt was unbearable, but the temptation was stronger. I texted back. Every time I slipped away, I told myself it would be the last. But the truth was simple, I was in love with 2 men. One gave me safety, the other gave me fire. And I could not choose between them. I was playing with fire, and I knew it. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. I became an expert at deception, living 2 lives without letting either collide. To Michael, I was still the loving wife who cooked dinner, folded laundry, and asked about his day. To Chris, I was a woman who surrendered herself without restraint, craving his every touch and word. At first, I believed I could manage both worlds without consequences. I convinced myself that as long as I kept Michael's home in order, he would never question me. But lies have a way of growing heavy. Each morning I woke up in our marital bed, staring at the man who trusted me unconditionally. Guilt settled into my chest like an anchor. Michael started to notice the changes. He asked why I came home later than usual. I told him work was keeping me busy, even though I worked only part-time. He asked why I smiled at my phone so often, and I brushed it off with claims that I was texting friends. He wanted to believe me, so he did. His love blinded him to the truth. With Chris, the world was different. He was demanding in ways Michael never was. He wanted me to leave my husband. He whispered promises of a life where we could be free, where I would never have to lie again. But deep inside, I knew I could not abandon Michael. He was my husband, my stability, my safe harbor. The problem was, I could not let go of Chris either. One evening, I remember walking into our kitchen and seeing Michael preparing dinner. He had an apron on, and he was humming softly. It struck me then, this was a man who loved me without question. He trusted me enough to never doubt where I went, who I saw, or what I did. And yet, while he stirred that pot, my phone buzzed on the counter with a message from Chris. "I want you now. Come over." I excused myself, faked a headache, and went upstairs. Minutes later, I was driving across town, my body alive with anticipation, my conscience screaming at me to turn back. When I reached Chris's apartment, the moment his hands touched me, my guilt melted away. With him, it felt like nothing else mattered. But guilt always returned when the night ended. I would drive back home, my hair disheveled, my heart racing, and crawl into bed beside Michael, praying he would never wake and ask me where I had been. Sometimes I stared at his sleeping face and wondered how long I could keep betraying him. The turning point came when Michael found a receipt. I had been careless. I left a crumpled paper from a dinner I shared with Chris in the pocket of my jeans. Michael pulled it out while doing laundry. It was not from a place we ever went together. He looked at me with confusion, asking, "When did you go here?" My throat tightened. I lied instantly, telling him I had gone with friends. He nodded slowly, but I saw the doubt flicker in his eyes. For the first time, I felt the fragile walls of my double life begin to crumble. Chris, on the other hand, grew restless. He wanted more of me, more time, more commitment. He hated the secrecy, the sneaking around. He said things like, "If you loved me as much as you say, you would leave him." His words burned into me, and though I denied it, a part of me wondered if he was right. I loved Michael. I loved Chris. But love was not enough to keep the truth from surfacing. The lie was cracking, and soon, everything would spill out. The lie that I had been living was bound to unravel, and deep inside, I always knew it. What I did not expect was how suddenly it would all come crashing down. It was a Friday evening when everything changed. Michael had suggested a quiet dinner at home. He wanted us to reconnect, he said. He had noticed how distant I had become, and he was trying to fix something he did not even know was broken. As I set the table, my phone buzzed again and again in my pocket. Chris was impatient. His messages lit up the screen. "I need you tonight. You cannot keep choosing him over me." Michael noticed. He asked me gently, "Who keeps blowing up your phone?" His voice was calm, but his eyes searched mine in a way that made my stomach twist. I stammered something about a friend, but his hand reached out, faster than I could react, and he took the phone from me. What followed was silence. Heavy, suffocating silence as he read the messages. His hands shook, his face drained of color. He whispered my name, not in anger, but in disbelief. That single whisper cut deeper than any shout ever could. I tried to speak, but the words would not come. How could I explain that I loved him, yet I loved someone else too? How could I make him understand a betrayal that had no justification? Michael finally looked at me, his eyes wet with tears I had never seen him shed. "How long?" he asked. The question shattered me. I confessed. I told him it had been months, that I had met Chris at the gym, that I had fallen for him in ways I never expected. The words spilled out like poison, and I watched as each one wounded him deeper. Michael did not yell. He did not throw things. He simply walked away from the table, away from me, and into our bedroom. That night, he did not sleep beside me. I lay awake on the couch, trembling, knowing the life I had built with him was falling apart. The next morning, he confronted me with clarity. His voice was firm, almost cold. "You cannot love two people, not like this. You made your choice when you betrayed me. You are no longer my wife. Pack your things." The finality in his tone left no room for begging. I wanted to fall at his feet, to beg for forgiveness, but I knew it was useless. Michael was not a man who could live with betrayal. I left that house with nothing but a suitcase and my shame. Chris thought it meant freedom for us. At first, he welcomed me into his apartment, convinced that we could finally be together without secrets. But the reality was far less romantic than the fantasy. Without the thrill of secrecy, our love was not the same. Arguments replaced passion. Guilt replaced desire. Slowly, I began to see that Chris was never meant to be my forever. He was an escape, a flame that burned too bright and too fast. In losing Michael, I lost more than a husband. I lost stability, trust, and the respect of the man who once loved me unconditionally. I destroyed the life we built for a love that could never last. Now, as I sit here reflecting, I realize the cruel truth. I tried to love two men, but in the end, I lost them both. Michael shut me out of his life completely. Chris grew tired of me when the excitement faded. I am left with nothing but regret. If there is one thing my story proves, it is this: you cannot hold fire in one hand and water in the other without losing both. I wanted safety and passion at the same time, but instead, I ended up with emptiness. And that is my truth.